In 50 BBY, the Nightsister Asajj Ventress would be born on the planet Dathomir. Her mother was in the same coven as Mother Talzin, and it wasn't long after her birth that this coven would be threatened by the pirate Halstead. Striking a deal for safety, they agreed to give Ventress to Halstead. She would be taken to the planet Ratatak, which was a violent place run by criminals and warlords. In 44 BBY, Halstead was killed during a pirate uprising, and this was extremely hard on Ventress as her caretaker for the previous few years was no longer alive. She would soon notice a Jedi by the name of Kai Narek. He would be stuck on her homeworld while trying to resolve the pirate uprising issue. He would then be attacked by a Weequay pirate, and this is where Asajj would tap into what were unknown Force abilities at the time and throw the pirate through the air. Seeing this, the Jedi would take her as a Padawan, but it's important to also know that Kai actually killed her caretaker Halstead, not the pirates as Asajj Ventress had believed. The next 10 years, she would be a Padawan, and her training consisted of protecting the people of Ratatak. During a raid by pirates, her master would be shot and killed, where Asajj in a fit of rage would use his lightsaber and kill the attacker. It was here when she would embrace the dark side and engage in a wild amount of violence against the pirates. She would become an unstoppable force and would stop the planet's attackers and would claim this very planet to be her own. A fatal mistake occurred as she tried to eliminate the person who orchestrated the death of her master. It was a Volok warlord named Ostika Kreeske. She was captured during this attempt and as punishment had to fight in a gladiator arena with the stun collar around her neck. It didn't take too long for her abilities to attract the attention of Count Dooku, who would become her new master. Her new master and her had something in common as they were both members of the Jedi Order at one point in time. At this time, Dooku was the apprentice of Darth Sidious. As we know, the rule of two doesn't allow for Dooku to have an apprentice, but he did this in secret as a way to overthrow Sidious when the time was right. Count Dooku gifted Asajj a pair of curved lightsaber hilts that belonged to a previous apprentice of his. Both master and apprentice have curved lightsaber hilts, which is a fun little detail. The moment she officially becomes Dooku's apprentice was in 23 BBY, and she was also tasked with locating his sister Jenza. Looking through data pads and journals, she learned that Jenza was kidnapped. She found a criminal by the name Glut, who was hired by Raz Feladrone, but before any information could be obtained from Glut, he was shot by Raz. It's known that Raz was torturing Jenza to get information from her to help the Galactic Republic, and Ventress would also stab and put an end to Raz. Eventually, Asajj finds Jenza, and the end goal was to kill Jenza because the information she had could and would help the Galactic Republic. Ventress would successfully accomplish this goal as she apologized to Jenza while stabbing her with her lightsaber. Ventress would become a high-ranking officer in the Separatist military and began fighting in the Clone Wars in 22 BBY. She quickly gathered a lengthy reputation, becoming a household name among the Republic. Fighting on the front lines in many major battles, she even forced Jedi Master Home to surrender in battle after disarming him, but ignoring Dooku's order of keeping him alive, she would execute him on the spot and delivered his lightsaber to Count Dooku as a trophy. As a way to counter the Jedi, hyperspace routes were now what the Separatists wanted control of, and doing so could make journeys in the Outer Rim way longer and way more stressful. One of the efforts was on a planet Christophsis, which was allied with the Republic. Asajj led forces into the planet alongside General Worm Lawsome and Admiral Trench. Republic forces quickly came to their aid with who else but Obi-Wan and Anakin. This would once again result in a duel with the familiar foe. Asajj would just escape the Jedi while they quickly became overwhelmed by the Separatist forces. Her next task was to capture Rhoda the Hutt, who is the son of Jabba the Hutt, and spoiler alert, this isn't a smart idea trying to kidnap the son of Jabba. Traveling with Tatooine, she ambushed Rhoda's sail barge. Jabba quickly got word of these sudden events and hired any and every bounty hunter he can get his hands on to try and retrieve his son. Jabba would even reach out to an enemy with the Jedi. Dooku wanted Rhoda to be captured as a way to fool Jabba into thinking that the Jedi were behind this. Anakin and Ahsoka were sent and eventually were able to locate Rhoda as it was all a trap to make it seem like they kidnapped him. Footage was taken of them leaving with Rhoda, and Dooku would manipulate it, making it seem like they were behind the disappearance. All Ventress had to do now was retrieve Rhoda and return it to Jabba, and boom. This would be a genius plan. Launching a small attack on the unit rescuing Rhoda, Anakin and Ahsoka would stay ahead of other Republic forces as a way to slow the Separatists down. They would be split up, but soon the Jedi were discovered trying to escape from a nearby landing pad. Once again, after a quick duel between Anakin, Ahsoka, and Asajj, the Jedi were able to escape, and this forced Asajj having to retreat back to Dooku unsuccessfully with their tail between her legs. With the Clone Wars raging on, Dooku's spies learned that the Tridarians, who were a neutral party in the war, were being swayed in favor of the Republic. Dooku would send Ventress to change their opinion and make it look like the Jedi were the bad guys. She arrives to meet with the Tridarians' king, Count, and the Separatists would be positioning class star frigates in the airspace. Ventress meets with the king, and the frigates engage with an incoming Republic frigate carrying Yoda, who was able to escape the attack and make it to the surface on the planet along with some clone troopers. Yoda finds Count, and a deal would be struck if Ventress could capture the Jedi Master. They would consider joining the Separatists. Instead of a fair fight, Ventress deployed ample battle droids and tanks. Yoda would survive this ambush, and Ventress was now told to kill King Count. Yoda would have none of this, using the Force to stop her lightsabers from striking. Having to accept defeat, she escapes by quickly detonating bombs she planted near the ship above them. As the rebel fell, she used this to get aboard her ship and once again returned to Count Dooku with an unsuccessful mission. And yet again, what do you know, another crisis was faced as Nute Gunray, Viceroy of the Trade Federation and a leading member of the Separatist Council, will be taken into custody on Rhodia. And this was in an attempt to kill Padme Amidala. Aboard one of her ships, she finds the vendor that was holding the Viceroy, and she would begin to attack the ship as she boards it, wiping out the first line of defenses. Making her way through the ship, she was placing thermal detonators and comes across the Viceroy's holding cell. Asajj would be confronted by Ahsoka as she was to prevent a situation exactly like this from happening. Accompanied by Captain Agris, Asajj overwhelmed them both and managed to free Gunray. Not too much time passes before Jedi Master Luminara Undali arrives as she was to oversee the prisoner transfer, but she was caught up in fighting droids alongside Commander Gree. The two Jedi battled the Sith apprentice, and the duel was short-lived. Ventress would slice through pipes to blind the Jedi for a short period of time as a way to help her escape. It was here we learned Captain Argus was bribed by Count Dooku and working in secret with the Separatist. He would free Gunray and they would try to flee the scene. As they were attempting to escape, Argus was boasting and taking all the credit for a successful mission, which really bothered Asajj Ventress. Asajj, with a very quick temper, would take her lightsaber and stab him through the chest. With the war continuing to rage on even more, the Separatists were being hit really hard and they would think to attack the clone facility on Kamino. Ventress and General Grievous were sent to steal the genetic source material used to make the clones. In preparation of this attack, they studied Kamino and the facility as well as they could, locating every area on it. Unknown to the Separatists, a transmission from General Grievous and Asajj Ventress was intercepted by the Republic, allowing them to now stop this ambush. As the attack began, they assaulted the Republic blockade that was positioned, and they would sacrifice one of their own ships as a distraction, sending debris down falling onto the Kaminoan facility. Ventress was attacking the facility from the water, where nobody expected her to be. She would infiltrate the facility on her own, and she would head for the DNA room. Before Ventress could escape with the DNA belonging to Jango Fett, Anakin Skywalker would confront her, and the two would clash in another epic duel. The DNA would fall out of her possession, and the Republic would recover it. Asajj being picked up by General Grievous would both flee the planet, and yet again another loss for the Separatist army. With each passing day, Ventress grew stronger with the Force, and this became a concern of Count Dooku's master, Darth Sidious, also known as Palpatine, and it made him feel that he could be overthrown soon. Dooku would reassure that this wasn't the case. And it was here, during the Battle of Sullust, Asajj would fight Kenobi and Skywalker yet again. It was during this chase that Dooku was confronted by Palpatine about the threat he felt from Ventress. He was told to prove his loyalty by killing her. During her fight with the Jedi, her starship would be knocked down and she would request help. Dooku would reject her and would leave her for dead. She would then again be engaged by both the Jedi and barely escape. She would take her damaged starfighter, limp it across the planet's surface. It was at this point that the Providence-class Star Destroyer that was there exploded and destroyed the Confederate fleet that remained, which won the battle for the Republic. This left behind an unconscious Ventress and tons of debris. Exams showed no signs of life, and Dooku and Sidious both assumed that she had died in the explosion. They were mistaken as a group of scavengers discovered her among the debris and saved her. Once she regained consciousness, she demanded to be taken to Dathomir, which was met with hesitation until she force-choked members of the crew that saved her, and she took command of the ship traveling to her homeworld. She was surrounded by other Nightsisters who didn't recognize her and saw her as a threat until Mother Talzin came in and knew who she was. She would give her what is called the Water of Life, which is essentially a Nightsister ritual, and this is to heal Ventress. During this, she would have flashbacks of her life leading up to this point, consisting of her Jedi training all the way until Dooku abandoned her. Talzin was an acquaintance of her former master, Dooku, but never liked the Sith Order since they betrayed her and took Darth Maul away from her when he was a child. Knowing what Dooku had done, the plan was simple: assassinate him. Once Ventress healed up and got stronger over time, and when the time was right, they would strike. Eventually, her and 2 other Nightsisters would head out and locate Dooku as they hit him with the poison dart that affected him, but not enough to take him out. He would quickly attack the attackers, who were Nightsisters, and he would mistake them for Jedi, as all he could see due to the poison dart was the outline of a lightsaber. He was able to overpower the 3, but barely get away as he forced the 3 Nightsisters to retreat. After this attack occurred, Dooku was desperate for a new assassin to be alongside him, and he would actually show up to Dathomir requesting a new assassin, one who would be from the same family as Darth Maul. To find the perfect fit for Dooku, the Night Brothers were put through a rigorous test to deem who was worthy, and in the end, Savage Opress would be chosen. Ventress would travel to Toydaria, as Dooku and his new assassin were there for a mission, and this is where Ventress would side with her brother and try to stop Dooku once and for all. Savage was sent to capture King Katunko, and Ventress infiltrated the ship that Dooku was on. At this time, Dooku was punishing Savage for bringing the king back dead. Asajj would see this and use it as the perfect time to strike, and the duel had begun. Using Force Lightning, Dooku was able to hold his own against the Dathomirian warriors. Eventually, Savage, not knowing what to do, would attack his own sister, and it became a free-for-all fight. The 3 would split up as Jedi were after Savage Opress, which led Ventress and Dooku to continue their duel one-on-one. Ventress narrowly escaped and would hide from Dooku, Savage, and the Jedi. This had Ventress extremely shaken up, as she would return to Dathomir yet again. At this point, Dooku had enough and was planning on taking out the Nightsister. He sent General Grievous and a plethora of droids to Dathomir to begin the attack. The Nightsisters would be outmatched, and Ventress had to retreat deep into the forest of Dathomir. Mother Talzin approaches Ventress, but in a spirit form, saying the battle had been lost, but encouraging her to continue her life, and Talzin evaporates in mist, leaving Ventress shouting for her to return. Ventress, devastated, makes her way to Tatooine, specifically Mos Eisley. In the cantina, the bounty hunter Oked would harass her, where Ventress, not saying a word, would ignite her saber and impale him. It catches the attention of Bosk and other bounty hunters, informing Ventress she killed a member of their syndicate and they needed a replacement, and she was it. She was introduced to the rest of the team, which was Dengar, C-21 Highsinger, and Boba Fett. She would travel and do missions with the group across the galaxy, keeping herself busy and staying off of people's radars. One day in the cantina, she and others gathered around the transmitter, saying capturing Savage Opress would get you 1 million credits. Ventress asserted her dominance and said this bounty was hers. Off she went, tracking him to the planet Raydonia. Ventress spotted Opress and Darth Maul beating up Kenobi and getting revenge for what they did to Maul prior. Keep in mind, at this point, Maul was assumed to be dead nearly a decade ago, and this is the first time Ventress had seen him and can't believe her eyes. Having enough, Ventress would go in and aid a familiar foe in Kenobi, which had him shocked. They would escape and the two would part ways, but Kenobi gained respect for Ventress due to his life being saved to her. For many more months, she would work as a bounty hunter, becoming extremely wealthy and successful. Ventress would accept a bounty from the Rain clan for the capture of Volpai, embezzler Maregi, and in exchange would get 25,000 credits. She tracks and finds Maregi, but while pursuing him, she's tracked by Quinlan Vos. For those of you who may not know, Quinlan Vos is a Jedi Master, but for this mission, he was assigned to go undercover as a bounty hunter in hopes of running into Asajj Ventress and learning tips and tricks that Dooku taught her so that could help the Jedi taking down Dooku. The two of them fought and captured Maregi, while Quinlan was able to also work out a partnership with Ventress. The two went on many missions together, with Asajj assuming that she was teaching this very raw and new bounty hunter. On a mission to retrieve people from the custody of the Black Sun crime syndicate, Vos would be shot and wounded. He nearly fell into the lava and used the Force to avoid disaster, and this raised serious suspicion of Ventress, who wasn't sure how he managed to survive, but he somehow did. Fleeing heavy fire along with having the targets with them, they returned and got double pay as a sign of gratitude. The two would drink to celebrate this victory, and Vos would admit to Ventress the truth, and she was shocked but agreed to train him, as it would be another way to help take down her former master. Over time, they began to train, and Vos would hang on to his Jedi instincts, and Ventress tried to lead him to use some dark side tendencies as well. She even taught him the culture of being a Nightsister, bringing him to her village. After intense training, it was time to depart to Raxus to duel with Count Dooku. Vos and Ventress split up, as Quinlan would go and find General Grievous to prevent him from interfering while Ventress located her former master. Here, Dooku was met by both Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress, but Grievous was able to escape his restraints and help Dooku, now making an even 2-on-2. After some time, Dooku and Grievous would come out on top as Quinlan Vos was taken captive and Asajj would be sent retreating. Now she was to embark on a rescue mission. She knew exactly what Dooku was going to do with him, as she went back to members of her bounty hunting team with Boba Fett, Bossk, Razi, C-21, and Embo. They all agreed and set out for this rescue mission on Sereno. Vos is found, but Asajj didn't expect this. He thought that Ventress set her up. Dooku gave him a lightsaber and he embraced the dark side. He would attack Ventress and she let it happen but still pledged her allegiance to him, saying that she never betrayed him. The other bounty hunters did capture Dooku, but they knew it was a matter of time before reinforcements arrived and they'd be overwhelmed. With little time to decide, they fled and they had to leave Vos still with Dooku because he didn't trust Asajj and company. Ventress found Kenobi on Coruscant and they met in secret as she told them what was happening. Ventress would be followed by the Jedi, Akar Deshu, and revealed to her against Jedi orders he was asking for her help to retrieve Vos back from the Sith Lord. In secret, he snuck her into the Jedi Temple to meet with Kenobi and Skywalker. From here, they would also meet with members of the Jedi High Council. She admits to being Vos's lover and denied teaching him dark side tendencies, only ways in the dark side that counter and attempt to defeat Dooku. After a lengthy interrogation and still some doubt, they reluctantly agreed to send Kenobi and Skywalker with Ventress to retrieve Vos. With her efforts to help retrieve Quinlan Vos, Yoda offered her a full pardon for her crimes. Off the three went and immediately engaged in combat with the Sith Lord. Ventress and Kenobi would leave Skywalker and located Vos. He looked weak and like he'd been tortured. He claimed to have only attacked Ventress to fool Dooku, but she still didn't buy it for a minute as she sensed the dark side within him. Kenobi didn't sense any of that though. She quickly acted, saying he could only be freed from the dark side in death, but Kenobi defended the Jedi from this attack. Skywalker would rejoin them, and now it was time for the rescue part of the mission. They fled to their ship, but Ventress didn't want Vos to make it as she was feeling many emotions. The Jedi allowed him to exit the ship as expected, and Ventress wanted no part of this. She was able to fly away from incoming attacks as she led the group to hyperspace. Once again, Vos approached Ventress in hyperspace and tried to explain his actions, but she ignored him. They brought Vos back to the Jedi, where they thanked her for helping them, and her full pardon was granted. She again would reiterate to the Jedi her concerns for Vos's potential fall to the dark side, but she was then approached by Vos, who tried explaining herself once more. She briefly questioned herself on if he really fell or not, but didn't spend too much time pondering this as he returned to the Jedi Order, and the relationship would have to be over anyway. In the months after this, we would be in the final months of the Clone Wars. Ventress was still caught up on Quinlan and wanted closure. She travels back to the bar where they first formed their partnership, and who do you know? Quinlan Vos is also there. While she didn't feel the dark side in him anymore, she respected the Jedi's rules of no attachment and didn't want to pursue him as a love interest. He told her he would leave the Order once they beat Dooku so he could be with her, and she accepts his promise, and the two resumed the relationship in secret. And over time they would continue to meet, forming an even deeper bond. In one last attempt to get Dooku, Vos brings Asajj to the Jedi Temple, and not many people were fond of this. They put this past him as Obi-Wan presented Separatist activity, and Asajj was able to identify where Dooku and Grievous would be. And that was the battle over Christophsis. Dooku had a long vendetta against his planet, and he wanted to get revenge. Both Vos and Ventress wanted to stop him. Anakin and Obi-Wan would secretly follow them because they wanted to be certain that Quinlan didn't fall to the dark side and was still loyal to the Jedi. Vos defeats Dooku in a duel and demands for the identity of who Darth Sidious is. Dooku failed to once again persuade Quinlan to join his side and overthrow Sidious, but agreed to reveal the identity. But now Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived, disarming both the Sith and Quinlan and imprisoned them. But they would quickly escape. During this escape, they would kill Jedi Knights Akar Deshu and Cav Bayons, along with some clones. Kenobi alerted Ventress of Vos's fall to the dark side and asked if she could make him surrender or he will be executed. The trio of Ventress, Vos, and Dooku made their way to the Separatist tower on the planet where Sidious contacts Dooku. Inquiring about Vos, Dooku says he's an assassin and the current situation they're in first a Jedi. Once the transmission ends, the tower is bombed by Kenobi and Anakin, wounding the trio inside. Dooku was knocked out by this, and Ventress and Vos spoke, where Vos said that he was going to go through with his plan of finding out who this Darth Sidious was, and then was going to kill both Dooku and Sidious. She warned him the path to the dark side won't end well, and it was here where Dooku became conscious and struck Ventress with Force Lightning. He also hit Quinlan too before he could counter it. Ventress took the brunt of the attack as she was stopped for good, or so we think. Vos had the chance to end Dooku for good, but remembers the path to the dark side and refuses to do so. Count Dooku escapes thanks to reinforcements sent by Palpatine, and Vos would comfort Ventress dying in his arms. Vos, Skywalker, and Kenobi would load Ventress onto their ship, where she was kept in a stasis. Months later, Ventress would be taken to Dathomir by both Kenobi and Vos and placed her in the water in her village as green mist rises. Ventress was now in the spirit world, and Mother Talzin says, thanks to the words Vos had said, she had one more chance to go back to the living world. The choice was simple: stay in the spirit world or go back to the living world, but she would have to leave behind the heart's desire if she wanted to return to the living world. Ventress eventually chooses to go back to the living world, stepping back into the fortress on Dathomir. In a galaxy now ruled by the Empire, Ventress returns to bounty hunting, where one bounty leads her to find the clone Omega. Ventress accepts this job and locates Omega along with Clone Force 99, also known as the Bad Batch. They were on the planet Pabu and engages in a fight with the clones. Ventress toys with them in this battle, and once things calm down, Ventress explains that times have changed, and so did she. The clones knew who she was and what she did, so it was hard for them to listen to her and expect her to change for the better, revealing that Omega had a high metachlorian count, and that's why the Empire wanted her. After some convincing, she takes Omega out on a boat to test her abilities. These tests didn't lead to much, but she explains the dangers of the Empire hunting for people with high metachlorian counts, and says to them that they need to stay low and be careful. Ventress leaves Pabu and leaves her old life behind. She takes a security job at a transport office where a young Order 66 survivor by the name of Lyko Strata entered her workspace in an attempt to evade the Empire's forces. Ventress saw he had no money for the way of passage, but hid him where stormtroopers couldn't find him. Ventress tried tricking the stormtroopers into thinking nobody was near, but a woman by the name of Court gave away the hiding spot of the survivor. Ventress, angry, drew her lightsaber and killed the Imperial forces. This drew the attention of an Inquisitor, who Asajj and Lyko had to fight and would defeat, and Ventress, still searching for the information and whereabouts of Quinlan Vos, would meet with old bounty hunter buddies Razi and C-21. She would get information in exchange for help on a heist that they would embark on. On this mission, she would be betrayed by Razi, as they learned that the new friend Lyko Strata was actually a Jedi, and wanted to collect a bounty on him. Ventress fights back and forces Razi to give her information, which he does, and they leave Razi. Arriving on the desert world planet, they were in search for the hidden path and stumble upon a homestead where they come across an elderly man and his granddaughter. The man knew who Asajj Ventress was, as he was a former Separatist war hero. He would give her the location of the canyon, but it's hard to find the exact location since it's not on a map. His granddaughter accompanied them on the journey to the canyon, but they were attacked by raiders. Tensions would fizzle away as Lyko could speak the language of the raiders, understood why they were mad due to water being stolen. They became friendly with each other, and the raiders would also lead them to the canyon, and here Strata tells Ventress to join him and she could reconnect with Vos. But ultimately she would decline, and she had to move on, and Strata's path was as a Jedi, so it was best of them to both go their separate ways. As Asajj rides off, Lyko returns to her surprise and announces he has decided to stay with her. This is where the story of Asajj Ventress ends for now, and we aren't sure if or when we'll see her again. Hopefully we do, as Asajj, in my opinion, is one of the coolest characters in Star Wars with such a cool history. So let me know what you think about Asajj Ventress, and let me know who else in Star Wars you want me to cover. I enjoy making these videos, and I hope you guys enjoy listening to them. They are so much fun to go into detail on all these really cool characters. So don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more content around the galaxies, and I will see you in the next one.